I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering and data analytics. In this episode, we're going to return to our data engineering playlist, and we're going to talk about configuration files and .NET, and specifically how to encrypt your connection string section or other sections, as the case may be, so that they're safe from prying eyes. Now, sometimes you have to put a little script or an exe somewhere, protected folder on a network, but you have to leave some credential information in the configuration file, and you want to protect that from prying eyes. And so there is a way to encrypt your connection string section within the file without encrypting the whole file, so that your application can still read it. And this is also a method that you can use for encrypting the connection strings in your config files, web.config files for ASP.NET applications as well. So without further ado, let's get to our encryption of connection strings. Okay, so this is typically what you would see in your app.config files. There's your connection strings with your usernames and passwords. And this is what it looks like if you encrypt it using the method I'm about to show you. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to create a sample application that is sort of like the target application, say that you had running some kind of ETL or something like that, or maybe some service or whatever. And what I'm going to do is I'll create it and I'll call it connection strings app, and it's going to be a little console app that has some connection strings in it, and it's going to be, say, deployed to a folder somewhere on your network. And so what we can do is just do a simple console.write line, and that's going to have a message in it to the user, just saying, this has a lot of connection strings in it. And then we'll do a console.read key so that we can see the output when we run this little console app. So we'll just go console.read key, and that's going to create a simple little app for us that's going to just have a message in it, and we're also going to put some connection strings in here. So I'm going to pop over and I'm going to go into my app.config file, which has the startup section in it already, and I'm just gonna type in there, connection string section, and then I'll add the name of my connection, and we'll call it we'll call it finance. I can't type here today. Finance DB, and then I'll put the connection string. This isn't a real connection string, but in normal circumstances it might have an AD connection string in it, which has no username and password in it, or it could be a password that uses mixed mode security for your SQL Server connection or Oracle connection or whatever. So we'll put in username admin, and the password is the highest level credential or whatever, just to give an idea of what might be in your connection strings. And I'll add another connection string. We'll call this one the HR database, and so that'll be name equals HR underscore DB, and this will have name as HR DB, and connection string equals, we'll do the same thing, database equals HR, user is admin, and then we'll add another password in there for the HR database, just so that you can see your connection strings obviously will look very different, and they might be more suitable to, say, your Oracle connection or your Postgres connection or whatever. And so just to demonstrate, there's a couple in there. You could add 10 of them if you want. We'll save that, and then we'll go ahead and we're going to add those guys to our application. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll add a reference. So we'll go project and add reference, and we'll add system.configuration, which is a very nice way of handling connection strings in your application. It's a bit more safe than putting these into your code, your running code, or into your your VB code. So what we'll do here is we'll dim a string, and we'll go to our ConfigurationManager, and then we'll go to our connection string section, and then we'll ask for that finance DB connection string, and then we'll do the same for the HR, and we'll do that one the same way. So we'll do ConfigurationManager connection string and connection strings, and that'll be the HR_DB. I think that's what it was called. And then connection string. And so now we've got two connection strings in our application. And just for demonstration, I'll output those two to the console just so that we can see that our little application can indeed read the connection string section that I just populated a minute ago. And so we'll console.writeLine our finance string, and then we'll console.writeLine our HR string, and we'll read that exactly the same way as we read the previous connection string from ConfigurationManager. So we can say console.writeLine HR, and then we can just check that it is actually HR_DB. I was just checking that. And so then we can go back here and we can hit F5 and see what we get, and that's going to pop up in a running console, and we'll be able to see the output. And there you go. There's our connection strings in our output. So from there, what we want to do is we're going to copy. I've already copied the application from my .NET debug directory into somewhere that say is deployed, just as an example. So as you can see, there's the connection string section, and if I run the app in the same way, you can see that it also outputs those two connection strings, so we can read that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to actually create an app that will encrypt the connection string for that application that is deployed in, say, a deploy directory somewhere, and we don't want people to be able to read that who don't have full control of this computer, of course, and we can move on from there. We'll call our new app encrypt connection strings, and then the Visual Studio will build that for us, and we've got somewhere to start coding in our VB module. So we'll just put a note at the top here to just say what we're doing, encrypt or decrypt our connection string section of our app.config file, and then we can put a try-catch block in there just in case we get an error. It's good to see what comes up in the console and have the console sort of stop. So we'll go console.writeLine, and we'll take that ex.message, and then we'll do console.read key, which will stop the console from disappearing until we press another key to release it, and then we can move on. So we'll create a string to hold our exe file name, and we'll ask ourselves to type that into the console. So we'll add a message to say that. Say enter the file name, and then of course it'll stop. The console will stop on read line. So there we go. That allows us to put in a file name. So it could be any exe file that you have in the directory that has an app.config file. And then we'll do our configuration as a configuration, and we're gonna use the configuration manager, and we're going to open the exe configuration for that file, and that's going to allow us to to work with that configuration, and then we'll grab a section out of there, and we'll be able to work with the section and then encrypt it just the way that we want. So to do that, we'll use a direct cast, and we'll be doing a get, off of our configuration. We'll do a get section, and then we can put the connection string section in as our selection, and then we'll get the string itself, and we'll cast that into a connection string section. And so that's going to give us something to work with, and now we've got a hold of that section, and we can do some operations on it. So we could say if the section information is protected, then we'll unprotect it. Otherwise, we'll protect it, and that's kind of what we want to do. So if we run it once, if we run our app once, and it's not encrypted, then it will encrypt it. Otherwise, it will decrypt it for us so that we can make changes to it. Maybe the passwords need to be updated, or some server names changed, or something like that on your little app. So we can protect and unprotect just by running our little console app here. And so doing the protect section, we're actually going to specify the data protection configuration provider, and I believe that is in machine.config for the computer. So you can use that to encrypt the section that we're looking at right now. And then we'll save the configuration, and then we're done. At that point, the text file for the config will be changed, and we can do a write line, and we can output whether or not the file is currently protected or not, and then we can move on from there. And of course, we'll add a read key at the end of our script here, or at the end of our block, so that the console will stop once it's given us some feedback. It won't just write the feedback and disappear. So in order to do that, we'll do a console.read key, and that will stop it for us. And then I'll just go up and put a comment up here saying remove the protection if the section is already protected. Otherwise, add the protection to that section. And that will allow us to go ahead and give this a try. And I'll just, to test this out, I'll go and add a connection string to this app, just so I can test it out in the directory that it's in. And I can do that by finding the app.config file, and then I'll add a connection string section here, just to test it out before we move it to a deployed directory, or something similar to that, or wherever you might be running your code. So we'll say add name, and I'll just say my connection, and I'll add connection string with a different kind of connection string, and I'll say database equals my database, and trusted connection is true, or something like that. So for an Active Directory scenario, might not have passwords in it, but you might still want to encrypt that section, just so that people aren't reading it and getting any ideas. And from there, I can go take a look at my my code here, and just a quick look over. Looks like my concatenation is missing an ampersand there, and that'll put those together, and then I'll just do a quick check over of everything before we try this out. And I can go ahead and hit F5 and just check that out. So there we go, there's our enter file name, and I'll put the name of this app that we're building, because I haven't moved anything out of the debug directory yet. I just want to try it here. So encrypt connection strings.exe, and it says file protected is true. And so how can we check that out? Well, we can go and take a look at our config file in the debug directory of our Visual Studio, wherever you've got your Visual Studio projects. So if we right click on that config file and we look at our config file in Notepad++, we can see that there is a big sort of long string of random stuff where there used to be the config file or the connection string section, and that is exactly what we want to see, and that's going to add a little bit of security to our project. If we just go ahead and run it again, we can run it right from the directory, and we do the same operation. We type in the same name again, and we'll say encrypt connect strings .exe, and now it says file is protected as false, and that's what we want to see there. So we'll close that, and we can look at our config file again. If we open that up, and you can see now it's been decrypted, and it is now available for some changes, say server changes or whatever, configuration changes, and that's really going to help you out. So now to bring this full circle and back to our original example, we'll copy our little exe application and we'll move that into a deploy directory that we might have for some other applications, and so now we can see there's our original app that has, you know, a few connection strings in it with some passwords and usernames and things like that, and we don't want to see that for that connection string app. If I run it right now, you can see that it can read its own connection strings for finance and HR in this case, and so if we go ahead and encrypt it using the app that we just created, we're going to put in a different file name this time. We'll put in the file name connection strings app, which is the the one that's running on our network somewhere or somebody's network, and it says file is protected equals true, which is what we want. And then now if we right click and go to our edit with Notepad, we can see that it's been converted into this random string, encrypted string. And so the nice thing though is that even though it's encrypted, the app itself can still read it. So if we go back and we run our original app again, you'll see that the connection strings are still readable to the original app, which is great, and that's what we want to see. And so we could decrypt it as well if we wanted to, and go back and make changes. So we can decrypt it just by running our encryptor again. You can see there it's false, and then you can see we can open it again and make changes to the usernames and passwords or servers or whatever. And that is how you can encrypt and decrypt your connection string sections inside your config files in .NET. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion on how to encrypt your connection strings in your .NET applications. If you like what you saw, please give the video a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet. And make sure to click the bell when you see the bell so you'll be notified of any new content that I put up on the channel. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to put those in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer those. Have a great day, have a safe day, and I'll catch you next time.